Pokémon Legends ZA is the 37th Pokémon game released for the Nintendo Switch, but for me, it's a return to a series I've been largely ignoring for the past decade. The only recent games I've played were Brilliant Diamond, the Gen 4 remake that everyone loved, and Legends Arceus, the progenitor of this game. It feels like I'm the only one that actually boycotted Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. That's right, I, for once, have the moral high ground. I might have really skipped them because I just didn't care, but let's act like I was really mad about the national dex. The last mainline Pokemon game I played was Pokemon Y on the 3DS. Simpler times, right? Back when 240p resolution looked crisper than a $750 PS5 Pro. So having played only 3 Pokemon games in the last 12 years, I was looking forward to diving back in. I can barely even name modern Pokemon, unless they appear in Smash Bros. Honestly, I can barely even name Pokemon from the games I played. When I get older, seeing if I can name Diglett will be a good way to test my dementia. Rather than taking place across a region, the entirety of Legends ZA is in Lumio City, a place I had to look up how to pronounce. It's based off of Paris, the biggest difference being that it has much less cigarette smoke. Despite being a major departure from the exclusively natural environments in the first Legends game, I don't mind this change. I've always loved urban settings in games, and I'm happy to have a title that takes place entirely in one. One neat aspect of this game is climbing on rooftops, which is smart, practical, and fun. I love verticality in level design, which ZA does well. There's a puzzle-solving aspect in how you climb to the rooftops with scaffolding, and when you get the Rotoglide, it opens up new, Metroidvania-esque climbing possibilities. You have to hand it to the Pokemon team for the character designs. Decade after decade, human characters still have a consistent and distinct Pokemon look. If you showed me a random Pokemon character, I could instantly tell you that they're from Pokemon, just by their design. It's impressive to be able to keep that up. Would an art style change be a way to breathe some life into the series? Sure, but I don't admonish them for sticking with an iconic style. The hairstyles in this game, though, are ridiculous. Every character has a more stupid looking haircut than the last, none of which I've ever seen something remotely like growing out of a real person's head. I can buy roaming monsters that people capture in battle, but when it comes to hairstyles, there's only so much I can take. The game's activities can be divided up into 4 sections. Main missions, often relating to the ZA Royale tournament, side missions, which involve helping people around town, wild areas, where you capture Pokemon, and battle zones, where you pit yourself against other trainers. Even though the gameplay of these activities revolves around battling, the different environments and tasks make each feel distinct. It minimizes player fatigue. If you get tired of one activity, you can go and do something else. If you burn out on the main story, it's nice to be able to go capture Pokemon in a wild zone, or solve citizens' problems, or grind in battle zones. Speaking of the main story, good lord is it boring. I was more entertained with the narrative of Yoshi's Crafted World. The plot is just not interesting. The main objective is to reach the top of the ZA Royale tournament while stopping rogue Mega Evolutions to save the city. There's hardly any twists and turns. There's minor revelations at the end, but they're telegraphed way in advance, so they're not a surprise and don't have any impact on the final goal. The issue here is that there's no actual villain in the story, no antagonist for your protagonist to work against. For a while, it looked like Quasartico Inc. might be the secret bad guys, but nope, they're just as well-meaning as everyone else. Even your final opponent in the ZA Royale hardly has any nefarious purpose, and shortly after meeting them, he's another amicable, benevolent Boy Scout. I think AZ should have been the end villain. Immediately when you meet him, you know something's up with him, thanks to his uncontrolled hair and legs longer than a Norwegian khaki model. You're told right away that he's 3,000 years old, which returns during the reveal of his dark past towards the game's finale, but why not have him maintain those evil intentions? Make him the cause of the rogue Mega Evolutions in pursuit of some goal. Maybe instead of him having revived Floette thousands of years ago, have him try to harness the Mega Evolution power to revive her now. giving him a motivation that you can oppose but still understand. It would give you and the rest of Team MZ conflicting emotions, and the final boss could have been him in a Pokemon battle. But no, instead the turmoil with Prism Tower and Rogue Mega Evolutions are just happening because they're happening, without any malicious foe behind the wheel. I also couldn't find many of the characters likable. Tawny's core personality trait was being annoying, I got sick of Naveen's Eeyore shtick after about a minute, and I could hardly tell you anything about Lita. They bring up one time in the beginning that she likes to dance, and then it's never discussed again. What was even the point of that? Some of the opponents you have to face through the ZA Royale were a bit better, like Ivor, Canary, and Jacinth, however you say that name, but that's as good as it gets. Pokemon has a blandness problem. Everything about this game's narrative felt so safe and generic. No characters were allowed to be evil, or somewhat rude. Even Corbeau, the most outright antagonistic character, quickly turns into another helpful Harry right after you defeat him. I'm not asking for an edgelord Pokemon game, and I know that will never happen, but I want the characters to have a bit of bite to them. The side missions provide a change of pace from the main story, and my god are there a ton of them. There's over 100, with more popping up every few main objectives. The vast majority go pretty quickly, usually just involving a Pokemon battle or two, but some have more meat to them. You can get all 3 of the X and Y starters through them, which is pretty cool. So if you want to dump your Feral Gator after seeing how much less cute he is than Totodile, this is a good opportunity. Also in Lumio City are the Wild Zones, the only parts that feel like Legends Arceus. Here, wild Pokemon roam freely until you start kidnapping them. I get what they were trying to do here. Did they pull it off? I'd try to be sneaky capturing Pokemon, but things would devolve into chaos very quickly. It only takes one Pokemon to spot you for them all to start attacking, making any retreat into obscurity practically impossible. I'd have loved to be as hidden as YouTube superstars from 2009 are now, but I couldn't make it happen. Eventually I figured this out and infiltrated the wild zones differently, running in for one specific Pokemon and running back out. This wasn't as fun as staying in there for a while, and I don't think it's what the developers intended, but it felt like the optimal strategy, even if it wasn't as fun. Then finally, there's the battle zones. When the sun goes down and the kids are in bed, it's time to get freaky with Pokemon battles. Each night, a different area of Lumio City is sectioned off into a battle zone, rife with trainers looking to take you down. This is where it's easiest to level up, but also where you need to go to advance through the ZA Royale. Each match of the Royale requires challenger tickets, which are gained through defeating trainers and completing objectives in the battle zone. You can get enough by just doing the trainer battles, but unless you love spending hours grinding away, the extra objectives are the way to go. Throughout the zones, you'll find battle cards, giving you different challenges to complete in exchange for extra points. These might be using super effective moves, sneaking up on trainers, or using moves of a certain type. This works well to add variety into the battles, with the objectives pivoting you from your routine. If you can get a big windfall of tickets from using a type of move that none of your party have, you're incentivized to swap to a Pokemon that does, introducing you to fighting styles that you might have ignored. It's a roguelike approach to Pokemon battles, which could work well as a foundation for an entire other game. So maybe we'll get a spin-off of this spin-off one day. We'll be doing it Persona 5 Striker style. The best aspect of Pokemon is still here: team management. For me, the real fun of the game, what makes Pokemon Pokemon, is having access to hundreds of fighters, but only being able to choose 6 for your team. It's the calculations that you have to put in to create a balanced, versatile team, bolstering strengths and lessening weaknesses. I love swapping Pokemon to see how they do, feeling like the coach of a football team as I try to get every position filled with the perfect candidate. In this regard, there's nothing else like Pokemon, although maybe that's due more to Nintendo's rampant litigiousness than anything else. But really, there's a lot of turn-based RPGs out there, and none play like Pokemon. There's plenty where you have 3 or 4 guys standing in a row and you use all of them, but no others where you have just one fighter out and you freely swap between it and 5 others. Combine that with the rock, paper, scissors type matchups, and Pokemon has been able to remain a unique and engaging game for decades. Although, as much as I like the mind games of the type matchups, I can't remember them all. There's over 200 Pokemon in this game, which is a fraction of the overall number, but still, every battle, unless I'm overleveled, I'm always pausing to quickly Google what type the opposing Pokemon is, then tabbing over to a type matchup chart to see what it's weak against. Maybe I'm just dumb, but unless you're a real Pokemon diehard, I have to imagine most other players are in the same stupid boat. Pokemon is a casual franchise. Is everyone else doing the same thing as me? Constantly looking up what's strong against electric? A lot of people have video game tattoos, and if I got one, it wouldn't be a 1-up mushroom or something. It would be a Pokemon type chart, so I can remember what I'm doing. A big change Legends ZA brings is real-time combat, unlike the series' traditional turn-based mode. Can you believe it? Halo is on PlayStation, we have an American Pope, and Pokemon is not turn-based. It's a huge twist on what we expect from a Pokemon game. One that's not without issue, but it's great to see Game Freak taking some risks for once. The best part of this new system is actually seeing the Pokemon fight, rather than a representation. In the older games, you had to use a lot of imagination in the battles, since you'd be looking at 2 static images sending pixels back and forth at each other. Here, the battles that you used to have to imagine are actually happening right in front of you. It's cool to see the Pokemon use both ranged and close-up attacks, constantly shifting around the field. All moves from the traditional titles return, but now they're real and all around you. Maybe this isn't so impressive after the recent entries, but again, I've been out of the game for a while, so to me, it's a huge improvement. In the normal games, each move cost power points, abbreviated to the absolute delight of every 10-year-old to the acronym PP. Each move only had so much PP, with the stronger attacks coming with a lower amount to prevent overuse. In Legends ZA, there's no more PP, like Caitlyn Jenner. Instead, each move takes a certain amount of time to cool down before you can use it again, with the more powerful ones taking longer. I'd say this works, but it also doesn't. This setup is probably the best they could do, but it has some glaring flaws. It's clear the developers didn't want the player to spam the most powerful attacks, but I don't think they did enough to prevent that. The cooldowns for the strong moves take longer, but they're not that long, and you can easily cycle through your other moves in the time it takes for your best one to refill. For this reason, I found moves that affect your or your opponent's Pokemon's status pretty useless. In the time it takes to do a status effect, you could just keep pummeling the other Pokemon with attacks instead. Plus, with the fast pace, I found it hard to keep track of what status effects had been used. It's easy to remember that your defense is lowered in a turn-based battle, but during the rush here, you might not even notice it. They could have kept the PP, incentivizing the player to use moves with higher amounts, but the entire setup of this game goes against that. Taking place in Lumio City, you're never far from a Pokemon Center. So if they had kept PP, you could spam the strongest attacks each battle, then make a quick run to the nearest center to refill. So that wouldn't have worked. Even though it would have been annoying, the thing to do would have been to make the attack moves take much longer, especially the powerful ones, and make the moves that affect status very fast. This would have forced the player to think more strategically and not just rely on their strongest attacks. The way the game is now, you'll never be waiting through the use of 3 moves for the first one to cool down. By the time you use 1, maybe 2 other moves, whatever you use first will be ready to go, with nothing preventing you from using it again and again and again. I wouldn't mind the repetitive battling if the game wasn't so long. My playtime of the credits clocked in at just under 40 hours. Maybe a bit of that was spent idling as I cooked one of the 3 meals I know how to make, but it definitely felt like 40 hours. Those of you who watched my Mario and Luigi Brothership review will know my thoughts on games overstaying their welcome. If I had just beelined it through the main story, I probably could have finished the game closer to the 26.5-hour mark that HowLongToBeat.com has it logged as. Also, I don't trust that website. Every game I play, the site lists as at least 10 hours shorter than it takes me. Maybe I'm Pokemon number 79, or maybe the crowdsourced info comes from turbo punks who want to impress anonymously, but either way, this site does not correlate with what I tend to get out of games. I could have blasted through the main quest and ignored everything else, but is that really playing the game the way it's intended? Even the wild zones could largely be skipped over. That would be brushing past a major portion of the game. I didn't do anywhere near all of the side missions. Probably not even half, but with how many there are, it's clear the developers want the player to engage with them. There's games where I ignore a lot of the side stuff, but for this experience, I want to let the game breathe. Moving through the main story as fast as possible isn't getting the full picture of what the game is. The problem is that all of the core activities in the game, the main objectives, side missions, wild zones, and battle zones revolve around the same thing: battling. It sounds dumb to be complaining that a Pokemon game has too much battling. I'm more focused on the fact that this new battle system isn't strong enough to hold up a 40-hour experience. For the reasons discussed earlier, the battle system doesn't approach the depth of the turn-based games, with how easy it is to spam your strongest attacks, and no punishment for doing so. Every battle plays out the same way. See what type of Pokemon your opponent sends out, swap to a Pokemon of your own that's strong against it, possibly with the help of a type chart, cycle through your attacks against them, and repeat for the next Pokemon. This might be fine for 10 or 15 hours, but by the time I got to hour 30, I was ready for a change of scenery. Maybe this is because I'm a casual fan, but the Pokemon series is just so weird. You have the mainline series that seems to not know where to go and are constantly angering some part of their audience, and then the million spin-offs. Pokemon has more dead spin-off series than most gaming franchises have living ones. The Legends sub-series is one I was very excited to see the future of when the first game released, but now I'm not sure where things go. Pokemon Legends Arceus is an entirely different game from ZA. Arceus took place in all natural environments, with few human characters out in the wild, and a big focus on capturing. ZA is in a completely urban environment, with a new battle system and more NPCs to meet than in Yakuza. It makes me wonder, why is this a Legends game in the first place? The only thing that the two games have in common is the ability to roll. Aside from that, there's much more that makes them different than makes them similar. So having beaten Legends ZA, I think I'm good on Pokemon games for a while. I don't mean that as a knock against it. That's just how I've approached Pokemon for a long time. As I said, the last mainline game I played was on the 3DS, back when we still had a hope that the Wii U would pull through as a success. Even though I have problems with it, overall, I liked Pokemon Legends ZA. In terms of delivering something new for a long-running and often stale franchise, it did a good job. I'd have preferred a better story and more likable characters, but with how much mass appeal this game needs to have, I understand why they did what they did. The real-time battle system has some kinks that need to be worked out, but it provides a nice framework for future titles. A bit of tweaking and rebalancing, and Game Freak could be on their way to a very compelling action game. Unique, but also fun in its own right. The setting was charming, and I appreciate the confidence that the game had to take place in one city. I might play the next big Pokemon game, I might not, and I'm more than fine with that. I think that a lot of the anger that the hardcore Pokemon fanbase feels comes from undiagnosed burnout. If I had played Pokken Tournament DX, Pokemon Quest, Let's Go Pikachu, Sword and Shield, Mystery Dungeon, New Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Unite, Scarlet and Violet, and Detective Pikachu Returns, I wouldn't have been nearly as excited as I was for Legends ZA. I don't think that Pokemon is a series that you should play all of, or even most of, the released titles. The ideal way is to go about it as I have, tapping in every once in a while when there's something that looks particularly interesting. Pokemon is not a franchise that makes me want to grab every item off of its buffet line, but I'm happy to have a taste every now and then.